My wife handed me divorce papers at my father's funeral. Right there, between the final hymn and the walk to the gravesite. She didn't whisper. She didn't wait. She just slipped a manila envelope into my hands while my mother stood beside me in black, shaking. Said it was for the best. Said she'd already spoken to her lawyer. I didn't say a word. Didn't blink. Didn't even open the envelope. Because I already knew what was inside. I'd seen the draft 2 weeks ago, when her lover tried to file it himself. My name is Cole Bennett, 46 years old, third-generation steelworker from Pittsburgh. 2 kids, 1 mortgage, and a marriage that looked solid from the outside. But inside, it had been rotting for years. I just didn't know how far the decay had gone until the man my daughter now called Dad showed up at my son's soccer game, wearing my old flannel and picking her up in my truck. Not a similar truck. My truck. She said I was imagining things. That I was being paranoid. That it was better for the kids if they had someone more present. I work 12-hour shifts and don't ask for much. I kept our lights on when she quit her job. Took on overtime to pay for her mother's surgery. Didn't complain when her brother borrowed $5,000 and vanished. But none of that mattered. Because I wasn't shiny. I wasn't new. I was the husband she'd already written out of the story. So she made her move at the one place she thought I wouldn't react, my father's funeral. She thought grief would break me. It didn't. It focused me. She didn't know I'd been preparing for this since the day I saw that man, Michael, tucking my daughter into the back seat of my car, waving like he'd earned that right. She didn't know I'd already documented every bank transfer, every text thread, every asset with my name on it that she tried to move into hers. She didn't know I'd frozen the accounts, or that I'd met with a custody strategist 3 months before she thought I even suspected anything. She thought I'd just break. But I wasn't built like that. So when she handed me the envelope, full of her confidence, her timing, her smug little signature, I took it without looking up. Said nothing. Not because I had nothing to say, but because everything she thought she was about to take, she'd already lost it. And she just didn't know it yet. After the funeral, I didn't go to the wake. I got in my truck, the spare one, and drove to the storage unit 2 towns over. Not the one listed under my name. The other one. The one she didn't know existed. Inside were 3 things: a fold-out table, a metal chair, and a locked fireproof box. That box held everything. Every bank statement. Every shared expense. Every transfer from our joint account to consulting fees paid to Michael's LLC. Every school form she forged my signature on, listing him as the emergency contact. Every picture. Every message. All of it backed up, printed, time-stamped, notarized when needed. Not because I was paranoid. Because I paid attention. The mistake she made wasn't cheating. It wasn't lying. It wasn't even dragging my kids into it. The mistake was thinking I wouldn't plan. I'd been watching her for almost a year. At first, I thought it was stress. She stayed out late. Started dressing different. Changed her passwords. I didn't say a word. I just watched. Quiet. Collected. When I saw her call log with Michael's name listed more than mine, when my son slipped and called him Dad during breakfast, I knew. But I didn't confront her. I built a system. I opened a separate account in my name only. Redirected my direct deposit. Transferred the deed of the house, the one she hadn't paid a cent toward, into a living trust controlled by my sister. She wouldn't see it coming. Because she didn't think I was capable of anything but swinging a wrench and paying bills. Michael, a fitness coach turned entrepreneur, was her escape plan. Younger, smoother, all charm and no roots. She thought she upgraded. What she didn't see was how deep I'd gone. I traced his LLC to a fraudulent billing scheme involving multiple women he consulted. I found his criminal record in another state, sealed, but not invisible. 1 charge dismissed. 1 pled down, but both ugly. And I wasn't just building a legal defense. I was constructing a timeline. Who moved first? Who spent what? Who exposed the kids to emotional instability? Every breadcrumb mattered. Because in family court, it's not about drama. It's about control, documentation, and silence. She thought handing me papers at my father's funeral would break something in me. But grief sharpens men like me. I'd already buried 1 man that week. And I was ready to bury the past, too. Not with emotion. With facts. She thought the trap was hers. She just stepped into mine. She didn't expect me to stay calm. That's why she staged it the way she did. The public scene at the funeral, the envelope, the soft, rehearsed tone as she handed it over like she was offering closure. She thought it would unravel me. Thought I'd raise my voice, react emotionally, make myself look unstable. But I didn't. I nodded once and walked away. And that scared her more than any outburst ever could. The first shift came 2 days later. She called, acting casual, said the kids missed me, and asked if I wanted to take them for the weekend. No mention of the divorce filing. No mention of Michael. I kept my voice level. Told her I'd be happy to see them, but only if the exchange happened at a neutral location. She hesitated, then agreed. Too quickly. I already knew what she was doing, trying to bait me into showing my hand. She wanted to know if I'd lawyered up, if I'd contest the custody, if I'd retaliate. But I wasn't interested in games. I was interested in results. That Friday, I picked the kids up at a gas station off the freeway. Cameras everywhere, time-stamped receipts, clean footage of my demeanor. They ran to me like nothing had changed. But something had. My daughter had a new locket around her neck. Inside was a photo of her, her brother, and Michael. Not me. I didn't ask. Didn't flinch. I made a mental note and took a picture of it later while she was asleep. Saturday morning, I brought them to a quiet diner we used to visit every weekend. Same booth. Same pancakes. I let them talk. And when my son accidentally said, "Michael took us here last week," I just nodded. That was the third time he'd referred to him as Dad. 3. Documented. The threshold for psychological impact in contested custody cases. Also 3. I took the receipt, the timestamp, the plate photos from the parking lot, and filed it all in the backup folder. On paper, I looked like a man reconnecting with his kids. But in court, I was building a pattern. When I dropped them back off Sunday, she smiled like she'd won something. Said they had such a great time with him lately. I didn't respond, because she mistook my silence for surrender. But silence was my armor. And beneath it, a structure she couldn't see, built from every lie, every manipulation, every reckless step she'd taken since the day she decided I was disposable. The trap wasn't closing yet, but it was getting smaller. The mistake people like her make is thinking the courtroom is where the war is won. It's not. It's won in the preparation, in the paper trail, in the details no one talks about until they're staring down a judge who doesn't care about stories, only evidence. And I had evidence. Every week, she gave me more. The second weekend I had the kids, she forgot to pack my son's inhaler. That might sound small, but it wasn't. His file clearly states he has moderate asthma, and any overnight stay without medication is considered neglect. I drove straight to the pharmacy, bought a backup, got the receipt, had the pharmacist sign a printout of the transaction. Then I took photos of the bag, the box, and my son asleep on the couch. Inhaler on the table next to him. That same weekend, she was posting selfies from a club 2 cities away. Time-stamped. Geotagged. While my daughter, 8 years old, messaged me from her tablet asking if Mommy's boyfriend was sleeping over again. I didn't reply to the message. I saved it. Screenshotted the timestamp. Logged the IP address from the app. Every detail counted. Michael started showing up at school pickups. My son's teacher, Mr. Alvarez, sent me an email asking if there had been a custody change. He said my son looked distracted and confused about who was allowed to take him home. That email went straight into the file. By the third week, I had 5 separate records of my children being exposed to instability, emotional inconsistency, blurred authority lines, medical negligence. All of it documented. She had no idea. She thought I was just going through the motions, playing the sad ex, letting her take the lead while I crumbled. But what I was doing was building velocity. And the deeper I went, the worse it got. Michael had started using my tools. My actual tools, the same set I kept in the garage, passed down from my father. My son mentioned him fixing the sink with Grandpa's wrench. That one hit harder than the rest. But I didn't show it. I just took inventory. Confirmed the set was missing 3 sockets. Reported the theft. Filed a quiet police report. Not to press charges, not yet, but to create a timestamp. To mark the moment they crossed the line from betrayal into provable misconduct. This wasn't about anger anymore. This was about precision. The foundation was set. And now, I was ready to raise the walls. The letter came on a Monday. Official seal. Courthouse return address. Custody hearing, expedited review. Filed by her attorney. She was trying to lock it down. Push for full custody based on emotional instability, citing my father's death, alleged signs of depression, and, laughably, inconsistent parenting patterns. She claimed I was detached. Said I was struggling to meet the emotional needs of the children. I didn't react, because this wasn't a surprise. It was confirmation. She was making her play, finally stepping out from behind the curtain and showing her strategy. Paint me as broken. Use my grief as a weapon. Make me look unstable, then sweep in with her new family image and claim she was the better option. But she underestimated the groundwork I'd laid. Within 12 hours, my attorney had a countermotion filed. With it, we submitted 73 pages of documentation. Medical negligence, exposure to unrelated adults overnight, violation of emergency contact protocols, multiple school records showing confusion during pickups and miscommunication from her side. We included printouts of social media posts, the ones where she drank with Michael while the kids were at home, tagging bars, and using hashtags like #MomNeedsABreak. Then came the sealed addendum. Michael's background, the sealed record, the dismissed charges, the corporate fraud claim. None of it defamatory, all of it factual. She had tried to paint me as emotionally compromised, but what we submitted showed a man who was quiet, methodical, and most of all, prepared. The court didn't schedule a hearing. They scheduled an evaluation. That changed everything. Evaluations are neutral, handled by third-party professionals trained to detect manipulation, influence, instability, and coercion. Her playbook didn't work there. Because charm doesn't override documentation, and spin can't undo structure. I spent the next week in silence. No confrontation, no contact, just routine, work, gym, file review. Every night, I updated the timeline, noting each inconsistency, every slip. Then the call came. The evaluator wanted to meet with both of us, separately. She showed up 20 minutes late. I was already done with mine. Sat in the parking lot. Watched her through the glass, trying to smile, over-explain, dominate the conversation with that same polished version of herself she thought always worked. But she wasn't talking to someone she could manipulate. She was talking to someone trained to detect it. That was the beginning of the end. Not because I said anything spectacular, but because the more she talked, the more the cracks showed. And all I had to do was let them widen. 2 weeks later, the evaluator submitted her report to the court. I wasn't supposed to see it yet, but my attorney had a copy on his desk by 9 a.m. He read it, looked up, said only one word: solid. That was enough. She didn't just fail to convince the evaluator. She exposed herself. The report noted signs of emotional enmeshment with the children, an unhealthy attachment to presenting a curated reality, and, most importantly, a disregard for the children's need for consistency. There it was. Not my words. Not my accusations. An independent expert's conclusion. And it got better. The report cited cohabitation with an unrelated adult lacking appropriate background clearance as a notable factor in the children's reported confusion. It didn't name Michael, but it didn't have to. Everyone knew who it meant. The evaluator recommended shared custody with primary residential placement granted to me. I didn't gloat, didn't celebrate, just took the printout, filed it in my records, and waited for the next move. It came fast. Her attorney reached out to mine the next day, wanted to discuss alternatives to trial, said they were open to revising the proposed custody terms if we were willing to avoid escalation. Escalation? They thought this was the escalation. They didn't realize this was me being restrained. I'd never wanted to destroy her. I just wanted my kids out of the mess she created. And I wasn't going to negotiate for something that was already mine by right. So we declined. Respectfully. Quietly. The court date was set. 3 weeks out. And for the first time, she looked nervous. She showed up at my son's baseball game that weekend. Alone. No Michael. No loud entrances. Just her, on the bleachers, fidgeting with a water bottle while I helped coach from the sidelines. She tried to catch my eye. Tried to smile. I didn't respond. Because everything she tried to weaponize, my silence, my grief, my loyalty, had become the very thing that buried her case. And she knew it. She called that night. Left a voicemail. Said she never meant for things to go this far. Said the kids were asking questions. Said maybe we could talk, just the two of us. I didn't return the call. There was nothing left to talk about. She'd spoken loud enough at the funeral. Now, it was my turn. But I'd do it my way, with facts, not fury. Let the judge hear the truth. Let her hear the silence. Because sometimes the quietest man in the room is the one holding everything. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Neutral walls. Neutral lighting. A clock that didn't tick loud, but somehow still owned the room. She walked in behind her attorney, dressed in gray, hair pulled back, holding a folder she probably thought looked professional. Michael wasn't with her. Of course he wasn't. He'd been scrubbed from her narrative, the same way she tried to scrub me from the kids' lives. But what she didn't know was, ghosts leave fingerprints. And hers were all over the record. My attorney leaned over, whispered, "Be still. Let it come to you." I nodded. That's exactly what I'd been doing all along. The judge reviewed the files in silence, then looked up, asked her attorney to begin. He talked about routine, familiarity, the best interests of the children. Claimed I'd distanced myself. Claimed she was the stable one. Then my side went up. We didn't raise our voices. We raised our receipts. Medical documentation. Social media timestamps. The evaluator's recommendation. The sealed report on Michael's prior charges. Everything lined up. Every date. Every inconsistency. And then came the moment. Her own attorney hesitated when asked about overnight cohabitation with Michael during the children's visitation time. He tried to sidestep. The judge didn't let him. So she answered. Said yes, he had stayed over. Multiple times. The room got very quiet. Not angry. Just cold. Like something had shifted under the floor, and she finally felt the tilt. The judge asked one more question. Were you aware of Mr. Langford's prior legal issues when he began staying overnight with your children present? She stuttered. Said she wasn't sure what was being referenced. The judge held up the sealed document. Didn't show it. Just held it. She stopped speaking. My attorney rested his case without another word. That was the difference. She had a narrative. I had structure. She had emotion. I had evidence. And when it came time for the ruling, the judge didn't waste time. Full residential custody awarded to me. She would have scheduled visitation. Supervised for the first 60 days. After that, review based on compliance. No outbursts. No breakdowns. Just silence. I stood, nodded to the clerk, and walked out. Not in victory. In completion. It wasn't about punishment. It was about protection. And the ones I was protecting were waiting for me outside that door. Smiling. Unaware of the war I'd just ended without raising my voice. The house felt different when we moved back in. Same walls. Same floorboards. Same photos on the hallway shelf. But it breathed differently now. Like something toxic had finally left the air. The kids didn't ask about her that first night. They watched a movie on the couch while I reheated mac and cheese and tried not to overthink the silence. They laughed during the movie. That laugh, their laugh, was the first sound in weeks that didn't feel like a test. I slept on the couch that night. Not because I had to. Because I didn't want to walk back into the room that still smelled faintly like her perfume. The next morning, I started making changes. Small ones. I boxed up every photo that had her in it and put it in the attic. I replaced the bedding. Repainted the door to the master bedroom. Not because it was necessary, but because it was mine again. She called twice that week. I didn't answer. Then came the letter. Handwritten. Apologetic. Full of phrases like, I didn't mean for it to go this way. And maybe we lost each other before we knew it. She asked if we could find common ground. Common ground? She'd built her house on betrayal and handed me the wreckage like I was supposed to thank her for the view. I didn't respond. Because the point wasn't revenge. It was release. And I wasn't about to let her back into the place I'd fought so hard to reclaim. Michael, for all his charm, had vanished. She didn't mention him in the letter. His name wasn't on any visitation forms. He disappeared the moment the spotlight got hot. Typical. People like him show up for the easy part. Disappear when consequences arrive. But I wasn't built for the easy part. I was built to endure. The kids started sleeping better. My daughter stopped asking to call him at night. My son stopped flinching when I raised my voice to call them in for dinner. The damage wasn't gone. But it was quiet now. Manageable. And that's what healing really looks like. Not a dramatic breakthrough. Not forgiveness delivered in some tearful scene. It's waking up, making breakfast, folding laundry, helping with homework, and knowing no one's lying to your face while you do it. That's peace. And it's earned. Not gifted. She lost more than custody. She lost access to what came next. The future she thought she'd steal. Because while she was breaking trust, I was building something unshakable. And now it stood, without her name on it. About 6 weeks after the ruling, she showed up at the edge of the driveway. Not the porch. Not the front door. Just standing by the mailbox, holding a paper bag, like she didn't know what to do with her hands. I was trimming the hedge. Didn't break stride. She watched for a while, then said she brought the kids old board games, the ones I boxed up months ago. Said she thought they might want them again. I said nothing. Took the bag. Nodded once. She looked older. Not in the way grief ages someone, but in the way regret sits too long under the skin. There were lines she hadn't had before. A twitch in her mouth when I didn't invite her up. She tried small talk. Asked if they were adjusting. Said she'd started seeing someone. Nothing serious. I didn't ask. I didn't care. Not because I hated her, but because I was full. Not with anger. With closure. She stood there, like she wanted something. Forgiveness, maybe. Recognition. A signal that her life hadn't detonated for nothing. But I wouldn't hand her that. She made choices. So did I. The kids were better. Stronger. More focused. Their school counselor noted a marked improvement in emotional regulation. My son had stopped clenching his fists when Michael's name came up. My daughter started drawing again. That wasn't coincidence. That was the result of stability. I thanked her for the games, then turned back to the hedge. She stayed a moment longer, then walked back to her car, slower than she needed to, hoping, maybe, I'd stop her, say something warm, leave the door cracked. But I didn't, because every time she'd needed me to show up, I had. Every time I'd needed her, she disappeared. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's releasing the debt, not pretending it was never owed. And I'd released it. I didn't need her to hurt. I just needed to know I could stand without her. And now, I stood taller than I ever had. Not because I was right. Because I stayed steady when it counted. She used chaos to justify her betrayal. I used silence to rebuild from it. She never understood that difference. But the kids did. They started calling me Dad, again, not like a habit, but like a choice. Like a title I earned back through consistency. One brick at a time. And I wasn't about to risk that peace, not even to make her feel better. Some things don't need to be said, especially when the life you're living already answers them. It's been almost a year now. The quiet is no longer unfamiliar. It's earned. Not the kind of silence that comes from absence or loss, but the kind that follows resolution. Like a field after a storm, not empty, just settled. The kids sleep through the night without checking for anyone else in the house. No more second voices at bedtime. No more double messages. No more confusion about who's in charge. They ask hard questions sometimes, especially my daughter. She wants to know why things changed. Why Michael doesn't call. Why her mom looks sad when they visit her on weekends. I tell her the truth. Softly, carefully, but truth, nonetheless. That people make choices. And sometimes those choices are selfish. That love can't survive dishonesty. That trust, once broken, has to be rebuilt, not demanded. She listens. And that's enough. I don't need her to understand it all now. I just need her to know she's safe. And safe isn't something I could have offered if I'd chosen revenge over strategy. I've rebuilt everything, piece by piece. The house is ours again. Not just in paperwork, in feeling. My son planted a tree out back. Said it would be our new family tree. Didn't even realize the metaphor. I didn't correct him. I just helped dig the hole. Their mother still calls. Not often. Sometimes she brings new books. Sometimes she offers to pick them up for a weekend. Sometimes she asks about my life, hinting at old familiarity. I don't give her what she's looking for. Not because I'm bitter. Because she's no longer entitled to that part of me. I don't owe her access just because we share history. Pain doesn't earn someone a seat at your new table. She had hers. She flipped it. Now she sits in the audience of a life she chose to walk away from and watches it unfold without her. That's not cruelty. That's consequence. The judge never raised his voice. Neither did I. But between us, we drew the line that needed to be drawn, not with vengeance, but with clarity. And now, I live on the other side of it. No rage. No gloating. Just presence. I show up for my kids. I hold the structure. I keep my promises. Because some men rebuild with volume. Others do it with discipline. And the quiet? It never left. It became my strength. The storm passed. The dust settled. And I stood in the silence, not broken, but rebuilt. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.